What if I told you that Earth was once a completely different planet? Not just warmer, but so fundamentally alien that if you traveled back in time, you'd question whether you were even on the same world. This isn't about the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs, or even the rise of mammals. This is about something far more shocking: the last time our planet existed without a single drop of frozen water anywhere on its surface. Welcome to Viol+ent Origins, where we uncover the most brutal chapters of Earth's history. Today, we're diving into a period so extreme, so utterly foreign to our modern world, that it makes every disaster movie look like a children's fairy tale. Because what you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about our planet's past. Here's what's going to blow your mind. We are currently living in an ice age. Right now. This very second. Scientists call it the Late Cenozoic Ice Age, which began 34 million years ago and continues today. But most people have no idea we're still technically in an ice age because they think ice ages mean everything is frozen. That's Hollywood fiction. An ice age simply means extensive ice sheets exist in both hemispheres, and we've got Antarctica and Greenland covered in ice, so we qualify. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-bending. To witness Earth completely free of ice, you'd have to travel back further than most people can even comprehend. We're talking about journeying to a time when our planet was literally unrecognizable, when crocodiles basked in Antarctic sunshine, when palm trees swayed in Alaska's tropical breeze, when the very concept of winter didn't exist for most of the globe. A time called the Late Eocene. This greenhouse world existed between 40 and 34 million years ago. To put that in perspective, this alien Earth was closer in time to the age of dinosaurs than it is to us right now. And what made this period so terrifyingly different wasn't just the climate, it was the absolute monsters that ruled the seas. Picture this. Global temperatures were 5 to 8 degrees Celsius hotter than today. That might not sound like much, but it transformed everything. France felt like modern-day Syria. The United States had Uruguay's climate. And with no ice anywhere to lock up water, sea levels were potentially 70 meters, that's 230 feet, higher than today. Florida was completely submerged. Europe was fragmented into countless islands. The Sahara wasn't a desert. It was a lush, humid wilderness, teeming with life. And in these alien waters, nightmares beyond imagination hunted in every ocean on Earth. Meet the Basilosauridae, the most terrifying predators our planet has ever produced. These weren't the gentle giants we think of when we imagine whales. These were hypercarnivorous sea serpents with the killing power of mosasaurs and the global reach of a pandemic. Basilosaurus itself stretched 21 meters long, about 70 feet of pure, streamlined death. Imagine a creature longer than a blue whale, but built like a crocodile, with pointed, serrated teeth, designed not just to kill, but to dismember its prey piece by piece. But here's what makes this creature truly terrifying. Fossil evidence from Egypt shows Basilosaurus actively hunted other whales, particularly juvenile Dorudon. We're talking about a predator so powerful it made other marine mammals its primary food source. Its bite force registered 20,000 newtons, enough to shatter concrete under the right conditions. And this wasn't some isolated monster. The Basilosauridae family conquered every single ocean on the planet. From the coast of what would become North America to the Sahara's ancient seas, these predators established a global reign of terror that lasted millions of years. Scientists have discovered something even more disturbing at the Egyptian fossil sites. Dorudon specimens show distinctive bite marks, punctures, and fractures that match perfectly with Basilosaurus dentition. These marks aren't random injuries. They show a deliberate pattern of hunting and consumption. Basilosaurus wasn't just killing other whales. It was methodically dismembering them, using its different tooth types to puncture, crush, and tear. Imagine the scene. An adult Dorudon, already the size of a modern dolphin, swimming in the warm waters of what is now Egypt. Suddenly, a massive shadow appears from below. 70 feet of prehistoric predator rises from the depths, its jaws opening to reveal rows of specialized teeth. The Dorudon attempts to escape, but there's nowhere to run. Basilosaurus was not only massive but also remarkably fast, its serpentine body allowing it to move through water with deadly efficiency. The kill wouldn't be quick. Basilosaurus' teeth were designed for systematic demolition. The incisors at the front pierced and gripped. The canines tore and shredded. The molars at the back crushed and pulverized. But wait, it gets worse, much worse. Because while Basilosaurus ruled the depths, the shallow waters were patrolled by the ancestors of the most famous predator in history. Meet Otodus obliquus, a 55-million-year-old shark that would eventually evolve into Megalodon. Otodus obliquus grew to 10 meters long, 33 feet of prehistoric nightmare. This wasn't just big for its time. This was bigger than any great white shark alive today. And unlike modern sharks, Otodus possessed specialized organs that could detect electromagnetic fields and temperature changes, making it nearly impossible for prey to hide. These organs, called ampullae of Lorenzini, were so developed in Otodus that they could sense a fish's heartbeat from dozens of meters away. Imagine being prey in these ancient waters, knowing that every beat of your heart was like a beacon announcing your location to these perfect killers. Now imagine the scene. Giant predatory whales hunting in the depths while massive sharks controlled the surface waters. But the Late Eocene wasn't done with its horrors. The waters also contain something that sounds like it crawled out of humanity's worst nightmares. Enter the Palaeophis, marine serpents that redefined the concept of sea monster. These weren't your average snakes. Palaeophis could reach 12.3 meters, 40 feet long, making them 4 times longer than any sea snake alive today and rivaling Titanoboa in sheer size. But unlike their land-dwelling cousins, these marine giants were perfectly adapted killing machines. They possessed compressed tails that worked like propeller blades, allowing them to streak through the water with undulating movements while maintaining the crushing power and hyperflexible jaws needed to swallow sharks whole. The Palaeophis weren't just opportunistic predators. They were specialized hunters with adaptations that made them perfectly suited for marine predatory life. Their spinal column was remarkably flexible, allowing them to move through water with the same type of undulating motion we see in modern sea snakes, but at an absolutely massive scale. Their jaws were perhaps their most terrifying weapon. Like all snakes, they could dislocate their jaws to swallow prey much larger than their head. But at 40 feet long, much larger meant they could consume entire sharks, large sea turtles, and even small whales. Fossil evidence suggests that Palaeophis used ambush tactics, hiding in coral reefs and kelp forests that were widespread in the Eocene's tropical oceans. Their coloration would have likely provided perfect camouflage in these environments. Imagine swimming in what appears to be peaceful tropical waters, only to have 40 feet of sea serpents suddenly detach from the coral reef, their jaws opening to reveal a maw wide enough to engulf you whole. Think about that for a moment. We're talking about a world where 40-foot sea serpents casually hunted sharks and whales in every ocean, where the very concept of safe water didn't exist anywhere on the planet. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. This wasn't some brief nightmare. This was Earth's normal state for millions upon millions of years. The greenhouse period that included the Late Eocene lasted 226.1 million years. For comparison, our current ice age has only been around for 34 million years. This alien world was the norm, not the exception. Ice was the aberration. And when you understand this, you realize that our modern Earth, with its polar ice caps and seasons and relatively gentle giants in the ocean, is actually the weird, unusual version of our planet. This realization changes everything. We're not living on the real Earth. We're living on Ice Age Earth, a temporarily cooled version of a planet that prefers to be a greenhouse world teeming with marine monsters. During those 226 million years of greenhouse dominance, evolution had ample time to create ecosystems of a complexity and violence we can barely imagine. The Basilosauridae weren't just large predators, They were the culmination of millions of years of evolution perfecting the art of killing other marine mammals. Every aspect of their anatomy, from their specialized teeth to their serpentine bodies, was the product of relentless, selective pressure. What made the late Eocene oceans so particularly terrifying? It wasn't just the size of the predators. It was how they fit together into an ecosystem perfectly designed for violence. The oceans were stratified by terror. In the depths, the Basilosauridae hunted large prey, other whales, big fish, anything substantial enough to warrant their attention. In the surface waters and littoral zones, Otodus and other giant sharks patrolled, their electrical senses making them nearly impossible to evade. And in the reefs and coastal areas, giant sea serpents like Palaeophis created kill zones where even the smallest creatures weren't safe. But there were also predators we haven't even mentioned yet. Enormous marine crocodiles, predatory turtles the size of cars, giant octopi that left no fossil trace but must have existed in a world so rich with prey. The late Eocene wasn't just a world with big predators. It was a world where every marine ecological niche was filled by something designed to kill more efficiently than anything we see today. What made these prehistoric predators so effective wasn't just their size, it was their specialized adaptations that modern evolution has never recreated. Take Basilosaurus teeth. Unlike modern whales that have either uniform teeth or baleen, Basilosaurus had what's called heterodont dentition, different types of teeth for different functions. At the front, pointed incisors for piercing and gripping. In the middle, dagger-like canines for tearing and controlling. At the back, serrated molars for slicing and grinding. This dental setup was more sophisticated than any modern marine predator. It was a perfect toolkit for methodically dismantling other large marine mammals. The Palaeophis sea serpents had their own terrifying adaptations. Their vertebrae showed signs of extremely flexible joints, allowing them to twist and contort in ways that would have completely disoriented their prey. Their ribs were elongated and flattened, creating a hydrodynamic profile that allowed them to move silently through water despite their enormous size. And their skulls showed adaptations for massive jaw muscles, the power needed to compress and swallow shark-sized prey. So what killed this alien world? What force was powerful enough to end 226 million years of greenhouse Earth and create our modern ice age? The answer lies in a geographic divorce that changed everything. Around 34 million years ago, Antarctica broke up with Australia, creating new ocean passages that formed the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. This ring of frigid water around Antarctica blocked warm currents and began absorbing massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. For the first time in over 200 million years, permanent ice sheets began forming on Antarctica. But this wasn't just a local cooling event. It triggered a cascade effect that would reshape life on Earth. The cooling was so dramatic and rapid that the Eocene-Oligocene boundary is now classified as a minor extinction event. The marine monsters that had ruled the seas for tens of millions of years suddenly found themselves in a world they couldn't survive. The Basilosauridae, those apex predators that had conquered every ocean, went extinct. The giant sea serpents vanished. The warm-water sharks retreated to ever-shrinking tropical refuges. An entire alien ecosystem, one that had dominated Earth longer than mammals have existed, was wiped out in what amounted to geological moments. This transition wasn't gradual. Geological evidence shows that the cooling occurred over just a few 100,000 years, a blink of an eye in geological time. Imagine the late Eocene oceans in their final days. The marine monsters that had reigned supreme for eons suddenly found themselves in rapidly cooling waters. The Basilosauridae, perfectly adapted to tropical oceans, began facing crisis. Their preferred prey, other warm-water marine mammals, were migrating to increasingly equatorial waters. The giant sea serpents, dependent on tropical coral reefs for camouflage and hunting, watched their habitats die as ocean temperatures plummeted. The Otodus sharks, which had thrived in global warm waters, found themselves confined to increasingly narrow bands of tropical ocean. This wasn't just a temperature change. It was a complete ecological collapse that wiped out entire food chains that had existed for tens of millions of years. And what emerged was our modern world, with its icebound poles and comparatively tiny marine predators. But not all marine giants disappeared instantly. Some found ways to survive in the new frozen world, and their stories revealed just how brutal this transition was. The first true seals and sea lions appeared shortly after the Eocene-Oligocene transition, evolving from terrestrial ancestors who took advantage of the new niches left by the extinct marine giants. Similarly, the first truly modern whales, the filter-feeding mysticetes, began evolving during this period, filling the ecological roles left vacant by the extinction of the Basilosauridae. These new marine mammals were different from their predecessors in crucial ways. They were smaller, more energy efficient, and crucially, capable of maintaining their body temperature in colder waters. The sharks that survived underwent their own dramatic transformations. The giant tropical lineages like Otodus eventually gave rise to Megalodon, but only after millions of years of adaptation to the new, colder world. Even the sea serpents attempted to adapt. Smaller species persisted in the remaining tropical oceans for millions of years after the extinction of their giant cousins. And what emerged from this climate apocalypse was the world we recognize today, but with a crucial difference. Modern oceans, even at their most terrifying, are only pale shadows of what they were during the Late Eocene. Our largest marine predators, great whites, orcas, even giant squids, are dwarfs compared to the monsters that ruled the ice-free oceans. A modern great white tops out at about 20 feet long. Otodus obliquus routinely reached 33 feet. Basilosaurus achieved 70 feet of pure predatory length. Our orcas, often called the wolves of the sea, weigh about 6 tons. An adult Basilosaurus probably weighed 15 to 20 tons and was exclusively carnivorous. Even our largest giant squids, those mythical creatures of the deep, only reach 40 to 50 feet long. The Palaeophis sea serpents reach the same size and hunted in surface waters. This is the shocking reality of our modern world. We're living in the ecological ruins of an age of monsters that defies imagination. But here's the question that should keep you awake at night. Will our ice age last forever? Scientists estimate that without human interference, Earth won't return to a truly iceless state for potentially 50 million years, the time it would take for Antarctica to drift far enough north to warm up again. That means we're living in what might be considered Earth's cold period, a temporary ice age that's already lasted 34 million years and could continue for another 50 million. The alien greenhouse world with its ocean monsters isn't some distant fantasy. It's Earth's preferred state, temporarily interrupted by ice. And that raises a chilling possibility. What if Earth decides to revert to its greenhouse norm earlier than expected? What if the ice melts not in 50 million years, but in our lifetime? We've seen what greenhouse Earth looks like, a planet where the seas are ruled by predators, so massive and numerous that they make today's great whites look like goldfish. Now, you might think this is pure speculation. After all, how could such dramatic climate change happen so quickly? But remember, we've seen this happen before. The Eocene to Oligocene transition occurred in just a few 100,000 years. In geological time, that's like snapping your fingers. And here's what should really worry you. We're already seeing the first signs that Earth's oceans are beginning to change in ways that echo the Late Eocene. Ocean temperatures are rising, sea levels are climbing, marine ecosystems are shifting poleward at rates unprecedented in human history. More disturbingly, we're beginning to see the emergence of larger, more aggressive marine predators in places where they'd never been seen before. Great whites are appearing in Arctic waters. Giant squids are being spotted more frequently near coastlines. Orcas are developing new hunting behaviors that make them more efficient at killing large prey. These might be the first signs that Earth's oceans are beginning to remember their violent past. that the Ice Age ecosystem we take for granted is beginning to crack under the pressure of climate change. And if that's the case, we might be witnessing the early stages of a return to Eocene-style oceans, seas dominated by giant predators and ecosystems designed for violence on a scale modern humanity has never known. The Late Eocene wasn't just a different climate. It was a completely different biosphere, where every principle of marine ecology was written by monsters we can barely imagine, where the very concept of safe water was a fantasy, where 70-foot predatory whales shared the seas with 40-foot sea serpents and house-sized sharks. This is the true hidden history of our planet, not a series of gradual changes, but a story of alien worlds separated by catastrophic climate shifts. We're not living on the same Earth that hosted dinosaurs. We're not even living on the same Earth that existed 40 million years ago. We're temporary residents of Ice Age Earth, a unique and possibly brief period in our planet's history when ice tamed the oceans and made the seas safe for creatures smaller than buses. But the alien greenhouse world with its marine monsters isn't gone. It's just sleeping, waiting for the ice to melt and the seas to warm again. And when that happens, Earth won't be returning to normal. It will be returning home, to the violent, monster-filled oceans that are its true nature. The Late Eocene isn't ancient history. It's a preview of coming attractions, a glimpse of the alien world that lies beneath the thin veneer of ice that makes our modern life possible. We're only guests on Ice Age Earth. The monsters are just waiting for the ice to melt. This realization fundamentally changes how we should view our place in Earth's history. We're not the masters of a domesticated planet. We're the temporary beneficiaries of a geological accident that temporarily made Earth's oceans habitable for creatures that aren't super predators. And that window is closing. Let me paint you a more complete picture of what these Eocene oceans were actually like. Imagine diving into tropical waters that are blood-warm, so rich with life that the water itself seems to pulse with predatory energy. The coral reefs aren't the colorful, peaceful scenes we see in modern documentaries. They're hunting grounds where 40-foot sea serpents lie coiled in perfect camouflage, their heat-sensing organs tracking every warm-blooded creature that dares to venture close. The open ocean isn't the vast blue emptiness we know today. It's a three-dimensional battlefield where Basilosaurus cruise the middle waters like living submarines, their echolocation systems constantly scanning for the distinctive acoustic signatures of other whales. And the seafloor itself is prowled by massive marine crocodiles, creatures we haven't even discussed yet, that make modern saltwater crocs look like house pets. These weren't isolated predators competing for scarce resources. This was a fully integrated ecosystem of carnage, where every level of the water column was patrolled by specialized killers. The Basilosauridae had divided up their hunting territories like modern criminal organizations. Different species specialized in different prey sizes and hunting techniques. Some focused on other whales. Others perfected the art of hunting large fish and sharks. What made these predators so impossibly effective was an evolutionary arms race and sensory capabilities that we can barely comprehend today. Basilosaurus didn't just have the standard mammalian senses. Fossil evidence suggests they had developed enhanced versions of every sensory system, turned into weapons of unprecedented precision. Their hearing was so acute, they could track individual whale calls across hundreds of miles of ocean. Their sense of smell could detect blood in the water at concentrations that would be imperceptible to modern marine predators. But most terrifying of all was their spatial awareness. These creatures could construct three-dimensional maps of their hunting territories in their minds, tracking multiple prey species simultaneously across vast areas of ocean. The Otodus sharks had taken this even further. Their electrical sensing capabilities were so refined they could detect the bioelectrical fields of sleeping fish buried in seafloor sediment. They could sense muscle contractions from miles away, feel the electrical activity of a fish's nervous system, even detect the bioelectrical signature of fear itself. Imagine being a prey animal in these waters, knowing that your very thoughts were broadcasting your location to every predator in the area. The hunting strategies these creatures employed were sophisticated beyond anything we see in modern marine ecosystems. Basilosaurus didn't just chase down prey like a modern predator. They used coordinated pack hunting techniques, with multiple individuals working together to trap and kill other whales. Fossil sites in Egypt have revealed evidence of what can only be described as whale graveyards, areas where multiple Basilosaurus individuals brought their kills to feast communally. These weren't random feeding frenzies. The arrangement of bones suggests organized, almost ritualistic consumption patterns. The predators took turns, respected each other's kills, and even shared resources in ways that indicate complex social structures. The sea serpents employed equally sophisticated tactics. Palaeophis used what modern herpetologists call bait-and-switch hunting. They would mimic the movements of harmless marine life to lure prey within striking distance. Their flexible bodies allowed them to hide among coral formations, perfectly mimicking the swaying motion of sea fans and kelp fronds. When unsuspecting prey approached, they would strike with lightning speed, their jaws unhinged to engulf victims whole. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this ecosystem was what happened to the young. In modern oceans, juvenile marine animals have refuges, shallow waters, kelp forests, areas where they can hide from adult predators until they're large enough to defend themselves. No such refuges existed in the Eocene oceans. Young Basilosaurus, still the size of modern orcas, were prey for their own parents and other adult members of their species. The fossil record shows clear evidence of cannibalism within Basilosauridae family groups. Young whales that survived to adolescence faced a gauntlet of predators at every size class. There were specialized Basilosaurus species that focused exclusively on hunting juveniles of other whale species. The sea serpents had evolved particular hunting techniques for young marine mammals, using their incredible flexibility to pursue prey into crevices and hiding spots that would be inaccessible to other predators. This created a marine ecosystem where survival to adulthood was extraordinarily rare. Only the most perfectly adapted, most cunning, most aggressive individuals survived to reproduce. When these apex predators did feed, the scenes were beyond anything Hollywood has ever imagined. A Basilosaurus kill site wasn't a quick, clean death like we might see with modern predators. It was a prolonged, systematic dismantling that could last for hours. Their specialized teeth allowed them to process their prey with surgical precision. They would start by crippling their victim, using their powerful jaws to crush vertebrae and disable escape attempts. Then came the methodical consumption. Different tooth types performed different functions. Some stripped flesh, others cracked bones, still others pulverized cartilage and organs. The process was so efficient that virtually nothing was wasted. Basilosaurus could consume a prey animal down to the last scrap of useful nutrition. And these feeding events attracted other predators. Fossil evidence suggests that successful Basilosaurus kills became focal points for entire feeding assemblages: sharks, sea serpents, marine crocodiles, all converging on the carnage. This wasn't just an ecosystem of large predators. It was an evolutionary pressure cooker that constantly pushed every species toward greater size, greater aggression, and more sophisticated killing techniques. Prey species that survived in this environment weren't the gentle filter feeders we associate with ancient whales. They were armored, fast, and often predatory themselves. Some early whales developed protective body armor made of dense bone and cartilage. Others evolved incredible speed and maneuverability. Still others turned to their own predatory lifestyles as the best defense against being eaten. The result was an evolutionary feedback loop that kept pushing marine life toward ever greater extremes of size and violence. When a predator evolved new hunting techniques, prey species had to develop equally sophisticated countermeasures or face extinction. When prey species developed better defenses, predators had to evolve even more effective killing methods. This arms race continued for millions of years, constantly escalating until the oceans were filled with creatures that were essentially living weapon systems. What makes this even more terrifying is the sheer global extent of this carnage. These weren't isolated populations of large predators confined to specific regions. The Basilosauridae had achieved true global distribution, with different species adapted to every marine environment on Earth. From the Arctic Ocean to the Antarctic seas, from shallow coastal waters to the deepest ocean basins, there was nowhere on Earth where these predators hadn't established dominance. Fossil evidence shows that they had even invaded freshwater systems. Basilosaurus remains have been found in ancient river deposits, suggesting that some species regularly hunted in estuaries and river mouths. The sea serpents were equally widespread. Palaeophis fossils have been discovered on every continent, including Antarctica, proving that these marine monsters thrived even in polar regions that were tropically warm during the Eocene. This global distribution meant that there was literally nowhere for prey species to escape to. No safe refuges, no predator-free zones, no evolutionary havens where gentler marine life could evolve in peace. One of the key factors that allowed these predators to grow so large was the greenhouse climate itself. In warm oceans, massive predators didn't need to waste energy maintaining body temperature. Every calorie they consumed could go toward growth, hunting, and reproduction. Modern marine mammals spend enormous amounts of energy just staying warm in cold water. Great whites and other large sharks are constantly burning calories to maintain their body temperature above that of the surrounding water. But in the perpetually warm oceans of the Eocene, these metabolic constraints simply didn't exist. Predators could channel all their energy into becoming bigger, faster, and more deadly. This thermal advantage also allowed for much faster growth rates. Young Basilosaurus could reach enormous sizes in just a few years, rather than the decades it takes modern whales to mature. The result was an ocean filled with predators that were not only larger than anything we see today, but also more numerous and more active. The sensory environment of these Eocene oceans would have been overwhelming to modern standards. With so many large predators actively hunting, the acoustic environment would have been a constant cacophony of whale calls, echolocation clicks, and the sounds of successful kills. The chemical environment would have been equally intense. The water would have been rich with pheromones, blood traces, and other chemical signals from the constant predation. Electrical fields from the massive Otodus sharks would have created a complex electromagnetic landscape that smaller creatures would have had to navigate constantly. This sensory richness created opportunities for predators to track prey across vast distances, but it also created evolutionary pressure for increasingly sophisticated sensory processing abilities. When the cooling began 34 million years ago, these perfectly adapted killing machines found themselves in a rapidly changing world they couldn't handle. The first sign of trouble would have been the prey base. As temperatures dropped, many of the tropical marine species that formed the foundation of Eocene food webs began to die off or migrate toward the equator. The massive predators, with their enormous caloric requirements, would have been the first to feel the squeeze. Basilosaurus individuals that needed to consume hundreds of pounds of meat daily suddenly found their preferred prey becoming scarce. The cooling waters also disrupted their finely tuned sensory systems. Electrical conductivity changes in colder water would have degraded the shark's electrical sensing abilities. Sound traveled differently in the changing thermal environment, confusing the whale's echolocation systems. As the Antarctic ice sheets grew, sea levels began to drop. Shallow coastal hunting grounds disappeared. Coral reefs died back. The three-dimensional hunting environment that these predators had mastered for millions of years simply vanished. Sweet dreams, and remember, we're only guests on Ice Age Earth. The monsters are just waiting for the ice to melt. And here's a terrifying thought to leave you with. Every single one of those massive predators evolved from smaller creatures. Just like every gentle giant in today's oceans evolved from the survivors of that ancient holocaust. Evolution doesn't favor the meek, it favors the efficient killers. Sleep tight. That's our journey into the alien oceans of the late Eocene. If this glimpse into Earth's monstrous past has left you questioning everything you thought you knew about our planet, hit that like button and subscribe for more Viol+ent Origins. Because trust me, this is just the beginning of the nightmares our planet's history has to offer.